Alex, $65 trillion. It sounds really scary, but how scared should we be?
You know what? I think it's really misleading. I think when you put the words 65 trillion and missing in a headline, it's bound to get a lot of attention. But we talk to sources all day and people in the markets who know more than me, certainly, and they're like, this is nothing. The FX swaps market is really big. But I think if you're the Bank for International Settlements, you're the central banker's bank, there are a lot of questions in these reports and in this review that they issued today. Primarily, what I look at and have been thinking about all day is, okay, BIS, like you're saying there's money missing. Well, let's look at how decades-long central bank intervention, monetary stimulus, quantitative easing, whatever you call it, what kind of impact that has had on the world and the markets and how they've changed. I think the other thing that you need to think about if you're regulators around the world is what role has the LIBOR transition played in this? Because I think that's something a lot of people
the transition that will never end, apparently.
Well, it'll end, Romain, I promise. We're sunsetting June 30th, 2023.
Really?
And LIBOR rates in the U.S. are sunsetting, so yes, it will end.
All right, well, I'm looking for that sunset to come here so we can stop talking about it. I am, though, in all seriousness, though, I mean, it's easy to sort of say, okay, this isn't really missing, that maybe BIS is being a little dramatic, but there is a broader issue here about a bank, or at least an organization, that is supposed to sort of monitor financial stability. And there's concerns that a lot of this money, it isn't just, like I said, we're not just talking about debt. We're talking about the derivatives contracts and swaps and other things tied to them can't be easily aggregated, can't be easily monitored. So they have no idea whether this debt is good or bad.
Well, exactly. And I think the other issue with this, and this is why I point out the LIBOR transition, is the LIBOR transition has moved all these countries have moved to what's called a risk-free rate. So it's backed by like secured collateral. So like in the US, for instance, SOFR is backed by the repo market transactions. And those are considered to be a lot safer than what was underlying LIBOR, if anything at all. So when you move, you've essentially fixed your risk. And so a lot of that risk has shifted out of these markets. And I don't think they quite understand the impact that the LIBOR transition is having, from a global standpoint. I think you need to measure.
But the risk has shifted out of the market, right?
Yeah.
But isn't that their concern? Is that there's now this shadow market? I put that in quotation marks. That they basically don't have any real purview.
Well, and the shadow banking system has always existed. I mean, if you think about it, the definition.
You're an apologist for the shadow banking system?
I'm not an apologist, but money market funds are technically a shadow component of the shadow banking system. I mean, the definition, like according to Zoltan Pozsar, is anything that's not a U.S. commercial bank. So therefore, money market funds are technically a shadow bank. So all this risk has been shifted to these other areas, and so that's what I think they need to figure out. The other thing is that the derivatives market, and they acknowledge this in the LIBOR section in this review, is that derivatives, the LIBOR transition actually dented. They say dented derivatives trading. So forward rate agreements, things that are tied that you would do between currencies have actually fallen off because of that shift in risk. That they don't need to do that anymore. And these are the things that everyone's going to need to assess. That it's like, okay, great, we got to the end of LIBOR, but I don't think anybody truly understands the way in which the market risk has shifted here by essentially fixing rates, where we don't have those credit-sensitive rates anymore. And I think this is what we're going to be studying for years to come. That it's not just the end of LIBOR. This is going to have effects that are going to be felt, and we're going to learn.
Well, Alex, I want to quickly go back to that big, scary number. Like you said, there's a lot of asterisks, there's a lot of nuances here around $65 trillion. But when does this, if we game plan this out, if we step into hypothetical land, what would actually cause the domino effect where this turns from a scary headline into actually something scary?
That's a great question, and I'm not even sure. And honestly, I don't think people quite understand. I think ultimately we're looking at imbalances in the risks markets. We're looking really at balance sheets, and this is where I call upon the BIS that they really need to be looking at this, seeing as they're the central bank's bank, that they need to understand that quantitative easing has had so many repercussions and has shifted the risks in these markets, and that's only something that they can truly understand if they're willing to assess, from how the developed markets have changed.